Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me at JessinoTweets on Twitter, as well as Jessino Tweets on Twitter, and I'm Jessica Black on Instagram. Don't know why that was hard today. Very weird. I think it's because my setup is different. But welcome to the show. We're doing a live preview today, as well as some Q&A. So make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. I am looking here at the camera, obviously, but then sometimes I'm looking this way because my laptop is like over here. You guys have no idea like what I've been doing over the last couple of days to try to like get my setup to a point where you guys can see me and hear me. The last time that I did a stream, I was like almost in tears because the internet wasn't working. And yeah, so and when I say like internet or Wi-Fi, I don't actually mean that. My laptop is literally plugged into it's like a hardwire connection. And well, my Mac, if you guys have a Mac, like in the newer version, they don't have the Ethernet connector or USB. So you have to get the adapter. So I have a new adapter, a better quality adapter, and then plugged into that is the Ethernet cable that's connected to the modem, or to the whatever, the little thing. So yeah, I'm no tech wizard. I'm just trying to make the content better. And I can already tell like it feels like the webcam is a little bit clearer, which is good. And so just let me know if you guys think this looks better or whatever, which is great. I'm also working on I have a new Canon camera that I'm working to connect as well. So I'm not using the webcam as much, and I'm using like a DSLR to do my live streams. So we're trying to get all this together. Okay, we're trying to get all this together and make sure the content is good. But first and foremost, the connection just has to be decent. And so hopefully this sounds better and looks better than the last stream. Like I said, make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Arsenal play Brentford on Saturday, and I think there's a sense of nervousness amongst fans because of what happened against Everton. I think a lot of us were really confident, maybe a little bit overconfident. I probably was in that camp as well, that we would overcome Everton, and we got dished, and we went through that. We have to put it behind us, but the performance was reminiscent, maybe not as bad, but gave that feeling that I had last season, where we were playing and it just didn't look like us, and we would lose games on the bounce, like 2-3 games on the bounce. And so Arsenal need to quickly turn this around, and Brentford at home is not an easy game to try to turn around on. I'm sure that most of us would be dying to play a Bournemouth or a Southampton at home right now, but we have to play against the most informed team in the league right now. Brentford are the most informed teams right now. They haven't lost a game in 9, and they're the type of team that I think most people, maybe outside of Arsenal circles, but I'm sure the narrative from the media will be Arsenal are going to be playing up against a physical, well-drilled Brentford side. And Arsenal don't like to get touched. So, they're going to be scared to get into the physical battle. We know that that's not true. We've played many a team this season that have been physical. It's just against Everton, we weren't up to it. And if Arsenal are up for it, we will win the game at the Emirates, rocking our fans behind us. Our team will come out triumphant, but it's just a matter of, are they up for the fight, and are they going to want it more than Brentford? Brentford have nothing to lose. They are a team that's looking to get into Europe, but they're not under any pressure. They're playing with freedom, and Arsenal are in a situation where I think we've been maybe a little bit lucky that the teams behind us are throwing away points. Manchester City lost to Spurs last weekend, and Manchester United have lost in midweek, or not. They didn't lose. They dropped 2 points against Leeds midweek. So we still have our buffer. We still have our 5 points clear. We're still in a good position. But Manchester City is in midweek. So getting the 3 points against Brentford will give us a good little cushion to play with Manchester City coming to the Emirates, I think on Wednesday. So Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm not sure. So that's my kind of interlude here. That's a kind of interlude. See what you guys are saying. Let's see. Anthony says, I think the Everton loss wake-up call that we needed. Manager said they wanted it more. They did, and it was clear, like, they really did want it more than we did. Dyche had them up for it, and I think they would have beaten most teams the way that they played against us. But I just didn't see that same spark from the Arsenal team. I didn't see that same steeliness. I think away from home, we've been one of the best teams away from home, and we usually don't give up many goals on our like away trips. And to give them so many clear-cut chances in the first half for me was something I haven't really seen from Arsenal, and showed a level of like fragility there and just not being up for it. And so, yeah, Everton definitely wanted it more, but we have so much to like play for right now. I mean, every game is the most important game. Every month is the most important month, but we're going into a run of fixtures where we're playing against teams that we're supposed to be beating. We're supposed to be beating these teams. So we need to be 3 points collecting. And so nobody has more at stake than Arsenal. So we should want it more than anybody. Amir says, we lost against United, then annihilated Brentford at their ground. I trust this team now, especially at home. The fans wouldn't allow a bad performance. We haven't seen a bad performance at the Emirates yet, and I hope I don't see one. Every performance at the Emirates has been good to amazing, you know? So I would imagine that the crowd being behind the team would make a huge difference. And, you know, being at your home ground will make the opposition a little bit more timid and not so comfortable playing their way against you. But what I would say about losing to United at Old Trafford was that a lot of us felt like we played good or we were decent. We were in the game. We were up for it. We just made some mistakes. Against Everton, what was alarming to me was that we didn't even play well. We were very off it. And it wasn't a level of talent or anything like that. It was just we were really bad and they were really good. And so I think that's the key difference in why people are so maybe a little bit tentative ahead of this match. John says, I have seen pictures from the training ground. Looks like Partey is fit for the weekend. That's good. We've spoken about this many, many times. I don't feel like, based on what I saw from Jorginho against Everton, not like that should be the benchmark or like the uh, vision that I have of him, like, if that makes sense. Like, it was a really difficult situation to come into, and we were under it away from home against a really, really good side on the day. But against a physical midfield, I do feel like, you know, if Brentford were watching Everton or watching Newcastle, they'll try to employ some of those same tactics. And so having Thomas Partey is going to be so, so important. I don't think we've solved that quite yet. 20 minutes left in the game where we're winning 2-0. We just need to pass them to death. Maybe a Jorginho can come in then, but Thomas Partey has got to be fit. We haven't gotten to the point where we can survive without him. Every game that we've lost this season, whether it be in the cups or in the league, has been when he's been not in the team or just taken off the pitch. So it's the stats are there. If he's playing, we do good. If he's not playing, we do bad. Like, you know what I mean? Let's see what else you guys are saying. SOF says Brentford are in good form. Won't be easy. They have physical players like Everton. The thing about the physical battle, though, is that, like, I don't think it's been we played against Brentford first time around. We played against physical teams before. And so my feeling is not that I'm so scared of the physical battle because we can't handle it. That's not true. That hasn't been true since last season. I think there's been a handful of performances over the last 18 months or so that have been like, whew, we weren't really up for it. But in those matches, it just wasn't the physical battle. It was literally, we were like brain dead. You know, I could think Brentford at the beginning of last season, we weren't really up for it. Crystal Palace away, we weren't really up for it, and Everton away this season, we weren't really up for it. But that's a handful of performances. I don't feel like that is a fact that Arsenal don't like the physical battle. I think we on those days, it was more just they wanted it more than we did, and if we had engaged in the physical battle, we would have been okay. Like, I didn't even feel like we engaged, and I thought Thomas Partey was playing like he was injured, and when he does that, we just lose all sense of self. Now, Gabriel and didn't look phased by the physical battle. I don't think, Saka looked phased by the physical battle. I just think in midfield in particular, Xhaka couldn't find his angles. He's not a good progressor of the ball through his dribbling. And so when they cut off the passing lanes, he virtually becomes almost like irrelevant and non-existent out there. He didn't see his usual pictures. I didn't see Zinchenko wasn't getting bodied. Like, I didn't see, it was mostly just in the midfield and the fact that like Xhaka couldn't find his angles. And then Odegaard, he was getting beat up, but he gets beat up a lot. So it's kind of like if we're up for it, the physical battle doesn't matter. But I don't think Arsenal are not up for the physical battle is not really a thing anymore, if that makes sense. John P says Partey should just play the Prem games. I do not want to see him in Europa League games at all unless it's in a final. Well, that's the reason for buying Jorginho. Like, if you can't play him in Europa League matches, then there was no reason to bring him in. And so Thomas Partey is definitely somebody that we have to wrap in cotton wool at this point. Just with the rib injury alone, we saw just the level really dropped from his perspective and then from the team perspective as well. So, yeah, I think what's the point of bringing in Jorginho if you're not going to play him in those types of matches? Lynn says, I felt the same way on Saturday. They had nothing to lose. But for me, because SD doesn't care if players get injured, we have a lot to lose. And with not a lot of depth, any injuries could be vital. Let's see. Don One says, Brentford form 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. And so, yeah, they haven't lost in 9. They're the most informed team in the league. But what I'll say about this is we played against one of the most informed teams in the league maybe a couple weeks ago in Manchester United. They were on a roll, except for the draw against Crystal Palace, and we beat them. And for me, Manchester United are a better side than Brentford. So I do think that we can beat them. And I don't really want to get it into my psyche that Brentford are this amazing team that we cannot beat. We can if we're up for it. If we're up for it, we look better than everybody. It was just like against Everton, that was the first time this season I'd seen us look like we did in that bad run with against Crystal Palace, Brighton, and Southampton. So that needs to be cut to 1 game instead of 3. Let's see what you guys are saying. Don One says, people keep saying we have a bad record against Brentford. Fact is, they haven't beat us since that shock defeat opening day. I think people just say whatever. Brentford are in a good run right now, and they look really, really good, but they only beat us on the first day of the season last season. We beat them when they came to us, and then we beat them early on this season. So they're not unbeatable, and it's not like they didn't have Ivan Toney the last time that we played them. Like, Ivan Toney was out there, their best possible team was out there. There was no real excuses. We were able to withstand the physical part because they were really direct. I remember at their place, it was a lot of kicking it into the channels and running, but we were up for it. And we're not that bad athletically than we were like a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, if you kicked it into the channels, we were finished. If you ran around in midfield, we were finished. Now, if we're up for it, into the channels, in behind our back line, in behind our fullbacks, we're fine. And that's a big part of their game is big switches, big balls in behind fullbacks, trying to Toney with really good center forward play, playing in Mbomo and players like that. We know what their game is, but we played against the best of the best center forwards this season and virtually kept a lot of them from doing anything. Harry Kane was pretty quiet against us. Tony was pretty quiet against us the first game that we played against them. Like, I think our back line can handle it. I think our back line is fine. I'm not really like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We know what they're going to do. It's a matter of, do we want it more than them? Do we have the energy and the confidence? That's key. Brian Land says Everton loss only highlighted how the league is competitive, so I don't think I'm scared of Brentford. It's at the and I feel like being at the Emirates is going to make such a big difference. You know what I mean? Brentford again are a good team, but I feel like at home we should be able to beat them. There's 120 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Now, the next thing that obviously we need to kind of talk about is availability. Who's there and who's not, who's going to be able to play and who's not. Looking at the pictures, it looks like Reiss Nelson is back in full training, with the team, which is good because we're going to need him sooner rather than later. Once Europa League comes back, like, we're going to need Reiss Nelson. We're going to need Fabio Vieira and these players to step up. The player that's not going to be available is Emile Smith-Rowe. So we kind of spoke about this last week, that he was aiming to be fit for the Brentford match. He's not going to be fit enough for this game. And I get that he re-aggravated his injury, but I'm at the point now with Emile Smith-Rowe that I'm thinking maybe it's a next season thing, not this season, because it's just taking a while. And I don't know, I'm almost getting to the point where I'm like, should we even think about him coming back this season and playing a significant role in the team this season, because his injuries are one after another. It's taking him a long time to get back into the team. I understand he had to do surgery because of the growth spurt and all that kind of stuff, but this is taking a long time. I would not be surprised if Gabriel Jesus was back before Emile Smith-Rowe. That's how injured he's been. So it's unfortunate that Emile Smith-Rowe is not going to be available for this game. I think this would have been a good game for him to come back in. It's a game that he's done well in. I thought against Brentford on the first day of last season, he was really good despite us being poor as a team. Against Brentford, I think he came in at halftime or towards the end of the game against Brentford last season, I think. And I know he scored a goal, and it was a nice one. And so Emile Smith-Rowe against Brentford is I just think he'd be perfect for it. And so I'm disappointed that he won't be available. Hopefully sooner rather than later he'll be available. But let's check out the fixtures, because he's not going to play against Manchester City. We're going to play our best possible team. We go away from home to Aston Villa. I'm not sure that that's the best game to reintroduce him. We have some away games coming up soon that are going to be difficult. Aston Villa away and Leicester away. And then we play Everton at home. So, and then March, that's when we play Bournemouth at home, which should be a good game. So a good game for us to maybe rest some people and maybe reintroduce maybe Emile Smith-Rowe and Gabriel Jesus back into the squad. Jesus is another one that, we had kind of spoken about him running on the grass again. Now he's back at London Colony. Now, a lot of people are, oh, that means that he's going to be back tomorrow. No, he hasn't been playing for a while. He had surgery. And so even when he first comes back into the side, I don't anticipate him starting. I think it'll be back onto the bench, introduced into the squad. And so they were saying around Leicester away, which is February 25th, is when we might see him back in the squad. But I would imagine that we wouldn't see him really playing maybe until Bournemouth at home. But either way, that is a boost for Arsenal, seeing Gabriel Jesus back, kind of pushing forward with his recovery is really, really good. So we have Emile Smith-Rowe still out, Gabriel Jesus coming back to Colony, and Reiss Nelson back in full training, but I'm not sure if he'll be on the bench. So the bench won't be terrible. I really do think that the buying Trossard was so important for this reason, because we have, a couple of attackers out right now. And so he allows those players to ease their way back in. But by March, I would expect to have Emile Smith-Rowe and Jesus back in, because again, we're getting back into Europa League and stuff like that, and we definitely need them. Don One says we are starting to miss Jesus. Yeah, I mean, the template is there, obviously, for teams that have been watching. Newcastle and Everton did a really good job figuring out ways to shut us down. Both teams kept us from scoring, and I think they're the only teams we have not scored against in the league, if I'm not mistaken. Newcastle was the first game we didn't score in, and then Everton away, that was the second team that shut us out. So the template is there to keep us from scoring goals, especially if you condense the spaces and, isolate the wingers, and then, flood the midfield in like a 4-5-1 or something like that. That's pretty much what Newcastle did. It's definitely what Everton did. And so the template is there to stop Arsenal from scoring if you want to play that way. Now, the one thing I will say is that most teams are not going to play that way. Even you saw Leeds at Old Trafford, as maybe it would have been better. Like you could have argued that it would have been better for them to kind of like try to sit in and condense the space and hurt United that way. But they wanted to play open football, and most teams are going to want to play open, attacking football, because that's kind of what everybody does. Like Burnley, Everton, that type of stuff, that is like a throwback. And so I don't anticipate many teams sitting back on us like that until it gets to the point where it's like end of the season, desperate, trying to salvage a point here and there. But for the most part, I still think there'll be gaps for Arsenal to exploit. But should we come up against another low block, you do need Gabriel Jesus there to kind of wiggle through that pressure. I mean, we don't have any ball progressors in midfield, and Jesus dropping into midfield and kind of playing like another number 10 unlocks so many possibilities for Arsenal, where when you have Eddie and Nketiah there, everything kind of becomes more stationary. There's no fluidity between the front three, and Xhaka ends up kind of being in this in-between space where he can't really affect the final third. And so, yeah, not having the space in midfield, not having the pictures readily there, it does make it a little bit more difficult. So we definitely need Jesus there for sure. Sam Dare says it's easy for teams to play how Everton did if the score is 0-0. We got to get at them early. I just don't anticipate I don't anticipate us running into very many teams that are going to sit in a low block. Like when I look at, the teams in the Premier League, like Aston Villa are not going to sit in a low block against us. Like Leicester are definitely not going to sit in a low block against us. Bournemouth, maybe, but even they're trying to play football now. Crystal Palace, probably not. Fulham, probably not. Leeds, definitely not. Liverpool, probably not. West Ham, maybe. I can see West Ham putting in like a 4-5-1 mean old block. Southampton, no, they try to play football as well. So again, like we'll probably run into a couple of these, but hopefully by the time we do, Jesus will be back. But it just, so many things are different now because Jesus is not there. And I think the players that really hurt from it the most are Martinelli and Xhaka. They suffer greatly when Jesus is not there. And so we need to just be able to do things differently. Let's see. P. Trim says, energy of the team should not be an issue. Players are well rested. They have to step up and want to be Premier League champions and just do it. Energy of the team should not be an issue. Players are well rested. How do you know they're well rested, though? I guess that's my question, is like, I know that they're playing one game a week and, but the pretty much the same group of players has been going at 100%, playing out of their skin since August. They started this like pretty early in preseason. So from August till now, we've been playing with the same maybe 13 players. And besides Zinchenko and Nketiah, it's been the same group. And so even though we can say they're well rested because they're not playing multiple games a week, and so they should just be fine, we don't actually know the extent to where these players are in terms of their fitness. And then I also think there's a level of like mental fatigue that comes into like you just need a couple of a game off here and there, you need a half off there here and there. And this is where Arteta needs to kind of use his squad. I don't see like even teams that don't have deep benches that don't play in Europe, I still see them rotating their squad because players still need rest. So the idea that they're well rested, I think, is an assumption because we're not playing multiple games a week. Um, and of course, they need to step up, but I don't think we should be super harsh on them because it's the first game in the entire season where we've seen them be under par and we're still 5 points clear at the top of the table. So I get the whole idea they should just do it. They should just do it. But there's going to be bumps in the road. Players are, we don't know what their fitness levels are like, and we don't know if they just need a rest. This is where Arteta needs to make the right decisions at the right time. I still feel like he is apprehensive about even light rotation. When we see rotation, it's usually 5 or 6 players at one time. Or like if we see one, it's usually injury and force. So Odegaard was out once, so Fabio Vieira started against Brentford. Xhaka had to come out because he was ill against Wolves, and then so Fabio Vieira came in. Tomiyasu, I think he was just playing in front of Tierney anyway, so can't really say that. I mean, it was just because Zinchenko wasn't there. And then Jesus's injury brought in Nketiah. Of course, we want to have our starting 11 and we want it pretty much nailed on, but there's never any light rotation. I think you could be able to carry a couple players that are not like, if you put in Trossard and took Martinelli out, sorry, somebody was calling me, and you take Martinelli off, like, I don't think you're going to see like a big drop off in the team or anything like that. And so against Brentford, I would like to see something different. I would like to see some players lightly rotated, not 5, 6, just maybe 1, maybe 2, so that some players that have been playing at a like, you look at Ben White, he was like perfect all the way up until we played against Manchester United. And now everybody's like, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with him? Is he injured? We don't know if he's injured or not, but he could just need a break. He could just need like a game off or two. And so, and there's also the element of like, I can play poorly because there's nobody else that can take my spot. I think some light rotation would be great, but I understand that we're like, just do it. You should just do it. But it's hard, players they're fatigued. Yo-Yo says when Jesus returns, another player will likely be out with injury. That's the way football works. The squad has to be prepared for things going wrong. I don't think the team is even like suffering because they have players out. We lost one game when Partey was injured at the beginning of the season. It was against Manchester United. And since Jesus has been out, we've lost one game. Now, we drew one against Newcastle, but that was kind of like something you could kind of maybe get over. We beat Spurs away. We beat Manchester United at home. So I guess my idea from this would be, I think the team is riding the challenge as well. I think the team is persevering beyond some injury issues. We've had 2 of our most important players go down with injuries, and we've been able to kind of get over it. The odd Odegaard needing to be out, I think Fabio Vieira was fine with the group. So I think they're doing a good job at that, where last season we just could not cope with any sort of injuries. Now, against Everton again, it was just they wanted it more. Period, Let's see. Don One says Ben White will be fine. He has a strong mentality. I mean, some players just need, like, you just need a game or 2 off. Like, and if you're complacent, which I'm not saying anybody is, but you need to know somebody can take your spot. And I think that's why you just need to shake things up every once in a while. And from my perspective, it does feel like Arteta's still a little bit reluctant to use his bench. I think he trusts Tomiyasu, and that's it. That's the only player that I feel like he trusts, to start games. He's the only player that I've seen, him be like just okay to use, you know what I mean? And so, Yeah, I'm wondering if, like, I mean, that's the point of bringing in Trossard, right? He should be able to start. But Arteta seems a little bit reluctant still to use the bench. Um, it's fine. Boy says nothing wrong with Ben White. Form is not forever. Exactly. And I think the most important part is, like, not to get too bought into the form and be like, we know Ben White's a great player. And on form, he was doing so good. But players go through ups and downs in form. And I do feel like sometimes when players are out of form, we tend to, like, exaggerate it and, oh, they were never that good or they're not that good or whatever, and start having an agenda. They just probably need a couple games out. Like, it's just not that deep. Um, Let's see. Anthony says, I'd like to see the left half space dynamic with KT, Gabriel, Martinelli, and Xhaka, with Jorginho as a pivot. Zinni's game asked him to stay behind the ball, maybe against low blocks. From my perspective, I don't see Kieran Tierney being somebody that's an answer to any of our problems on the left-hand side. I think the left-hand side is more of, from my perspective, I get that people are like, well, get him to overlap, overlap. Um, I think if you have a different left midfielder, you would be able to overlap a little bit more. I think it's more of a maybe a Xhaka issue than a left back issue. I think you lose a lot. Like, if you were to take Kieran Tierney and put him in there and lose Zinchenko, you lose a lot of your buildup. I think you put Thomas Partey in a position where he has to be pretty much the guy doing all the buildup, and I'm not sure what that does in terms of Xhaka. Like, does he have to stay back? So then now Kieran Tierney is one of your attackers. What is he doing? Is he crossing it in? Because we don't really cross it. So, like, why would we have him out there? From my perspective, like, Kieran Tierney kind of struggles with the inverted part of what we try to do. And because in the final third, we don't really cross it like that, I don't really know why I wouldn't want him to be one of the five. You know what I mean? I don't want him to be one of the five. Um, and if you guys are saying play Zinchenko in midfield, it's an idea, but it's not something that I feel like we're going to see. Arteta's very wedded to Granit Xhaka, and I think Granit Xhaka will always kind of play there no matter what. So I don't think we're going to be seeing Kieran Tierney as solving our issues on the left-hand side. I think if we could maybe play, I actually wanted to see Fabio Vieira play left 8, and I know some people are like, "Well, oh my gosh, we're going to play against a very physical team." Blah, blah, blah. Just hear me out. I think Fabio Vieira adds more in the final third in terms of being able to overlap, underlap, find the final ball, pop a shot, get into the byline, operate in small spaces, then Granit Xhaka offers us, and so when the spaces get smaller and the pictures aren't the same, I think Granit is pretty much like non-existent. And so I would prefer, Fabio Vieira to play in that position because he can actually switch places with Martinelli. And I think that's the thing. It's like we're missing a little bit of that Martinelli getting into those central spaces. If Fabio Vieira could pop out left wing, he can pop into false 9. Him and Martinelli can kind of connect in that way. Where Granit is a little bit more stationary, and without that obvious space in the 9 position, he's just kind of like, what am I doing? So it's interesting, but I don't think Kieran Tierney is the answer. Because people are like, we need to overlap. Because I think you lose too much without Zinchenko in that position. Karzi says Zinchenko doesn't really do overlaps. His job is to drop into midfield like Man City. And Mira says, surprise, MA doesn't rotate more considering how long he's worked with Pep. Always having the same Premier League 11 is great and all, but it's a lot to expect bench players to come on in cold and do wonders when needed. I would say one of the things that's really surprising to me is that sometimes I feel like when we don't see it enough, I don't think we see enough rotation in good moments. So we only see the rotated squad like when we're playing in the Europa League, but we don't see enough rotation in the Premier League, and that's where people really want to play. And even if they play well in Europa League, they don't really get a chance in the league. And so it creates this like situation where we only really see subs when we're under duress or when the game is already won. I would like to see some of these players play from the beginning with the better team so we can get a better idea of who they actually are and if they can play with us. I think a lot of our information around like Vieira is informed by what he does in the Europa League with the other team and playing with Sambi in midfield and stuff like that. But it's like people forget that he played really well against Brentford in the real team. He played really well against Wolves in the real team. And so I would like to see more of those players in good times, not just like when we're desperate and the game is pretty much like we're getting overrun and all that kind of stuff. And I get that that's kind of what subs are for, but I would just like to see them in better situations. Arteta's more like Klopp than he is like Pep in terms of his rotation. I think Klopp was very like, this is my starting 11 plus one or two, and like these are the players I'm going to run into the ground. From my perspective, like that's how Mikel Arteta runs his team, not like Pep. And I just feel like we need more of that just to keep players from getting complacent, i.e., tired. Karzi says Xhaka sits next to Partey with Odegaard sitting in front of them playing as the playmaker. He didn't play like that when Jesus was there. So when Jesus was there and Jesus would pop out wide and he would also come deep into midfield. Remember, we were getting upset with Jesus coming so far in, but Jesus doing that created space for Xhaka to make those late man runs and kind of play almost in the center forward position and connect in that way and get into the final third and make things happen. Now that he's not there, it's difficult to figure out what Xhaka's role is here because he's just kind of like there. Now, somebody that would be really useful maybe at left 8 right now would be Emile Smith-Rowe because he has a different skill set where he can get into the final third without having to have somebody like missing. He kind of knows how to operate in those spaces, and he can also progress the ball with his dribbling. So when the spaces get condensed and they start to flood midfield, he can earn fouls, he can wiggle away. Emile Smith-Rowe might be good in this situation. Xhaka is just not as good with Gabriel Jesus not there because he's went back into his double pivot role, and we're missing a midfielder now because Xhaka is not really doing, Zinchenko is doing the role that Xhaka used to kind of do. And so what is Xhaka's role now? He's not overlapping. He's not underlapping. He's not getting into the final third. And against Everton, he was just like a non-factor. And so there just needs to be, I think you just need to maybe try something a little bit different. But I get that right now we're under like a lot of pressure, so it's hard to do it. But sometimes you just have to take a little bit of a risk. Lynn says, yes, Jess, but look how long it took Pep to trust Phil Foden in the team at Man City. He has only been playing regular full season before he was in and out of the team. I would say that's a unique situation. Is Phil Foden in and out of, being introduced because he was a young player. As a general rule, Pep uses his bench a lot, like he will, and then he even saves players for certain runs. Like Mahrez and Jack Grealish weren't really getting used at the beginning of the season. Now that we're in the second half of the season, it's like it's their time now. And so I think as a general rule, Pep is a little bit more eager to use his bench. He obviously has a wealth, like he has so many players, so it's easier to do. But I would say, Arteta is more like Klopp in that way, where he's like, I have my starting 11 and this is it. But I think that puts us in a situation where when the starting 11 is not doing well, you don't have players that can come in that are fresh enough. You haven't really, provided them with any sort of like encouragement ahead of time. Like they can't play in Europa League and feel like they're going to start the next week if they play well enough. Like I think you do hurt your bench a little bit when you do that, you play it that way. It's weird. Like if I'm let me say, like if I'm say I'm Trossard, and I know I'm good enough. I know we're just chit-chatting here, but say I'm Trossard and I know I'm good enough. I'm 28, I've played in the league before, and I play really well against Man City in the cup, and then against Everton I don't get the start. But then when I come in, the team is like under siege and stuff like that. Then I play against, another team in a cup, and then I do well, and then I don't start, I don't get a chance. Martinelli just keeps starting, regardless if he's playing well or not. When you need me, I'm not going to be as like, first of all, I'm not going to be as fresh. I'm not going to be as like, ooh, you got to kind of give me a treat every once in a while. Not like you're a dog or anything, but you kind of need a treat. You need to be like, if I play well, is there a chance I could start in the league? And I think we don't have that with our bench. We don't have that with our bench. Anthony says the Tony versus Saliba duel will be tasty to watch. Well, if you watched it, and when we played against them away from home, there was pretty much no contest there because Saliba and Gabriel just absolutely. I mean, I think Tony had like four touches. Ivy says if Arteta continues this way after the then the aftermath will be really bad. Poole suffered for all the hard work they did last season. I kind of agree with I agree with what you're saying. Like, I'm not gonna like catastrophize it too much, but I do think that like you need a treat. Like, you need to feel like if I play good now, there's a chance that I can start. I don't think very many of our bench players feel that way. The only time they're used is in Europa League when they're playing with a really rotated squad and it's not that fun, or in a cup, it's not that fun, or they come in and we're under siege or we're losing, or something like that. And that's not, you need to do something else. Yo-Yo says Trossard will take Martinelli's starting spot sooner than later. It depends. I think Arteta should start Trossard and see what he can do and start giving people playing time based on merit. I do think Trossard has the ability to take somebody's starting position. If you guys have seen, like, Ramsdale has spoken about it, I think on a podcast, he said Trossard has come in to take somebody's spot. He's not just here to like back people up. And you need, when he has the opportunity and he does it, he plays well. He needs to get the opportunity to start. Period. Regardless, because Martinelli, as good as he is, he's out of form, and so continuing to play him, I think, is a mistake. E. Santiago says Saliba is average center back. Tony should have an easy time. Saliba's not average, like, at all. And Tony didn't have an easy time. Like, he was out there when we beat them 3-0 at their place. So, yeah, no. Ivy says, although Poole, the funny thing about Saliba is if he was anywhere else, people would say that he's world class or going to be world class or the best young center back. Because he's with us, then it's like, oh, he's nothing. Ivy says, although Poole were challenging in 4 competitions, so our case is slightly different. Exactly. So, getting into the match, we know that we played really well against them, but I do feel like it's going to be different this time just because they're in really good form. And we are closer to the finish line than before. Like, obviously there's still 18 games left or 19 games left. But when we played against Brentford originally, we're still kind of having fun, playing well. Now that the title challenge talk is really, really there now, I think it's like the temperature is rising. And so there's going to be a little bit of anxiety. There's going to be a little bit of like tension. It's going to be there. It's going to be palpable. And Brentford are going to be like, well, we don't really have anything to worry about. We're not getting relegated. We're fighting for a European spot, but we're not really under pressure to get it. And so all of the impetus is on Arsenal to make something happen and to break through and win the game. I think this game is going to be tough. I don't think it's going to be like when we played them at their place. I think they'll be up for it and we'll have a little bit of nerves from the last game. If I'm honest with you guys, I think we're going to have to like knock those, nerves out, and hopefully the fans will do that. But if we don't come out of the block swinging, we're going to be in trouble. Brentford are the type of team that if you're not up for it, they'll be 2-3-0 up before you know it. So Arsenal have 100% have to be ready to come, out of the blocks, swing in fast as they can, and they need to be ready to take the chances when they get them. One thing that I saw against Everton that I haven't seen this season is snatching at shots. Nketiah had a really bad one. Odegaard had a really bad one. I think Trossard had a really bad one. Zinchenko shooting from long range. And if you don't get the goal early, you still need to be patient. and don't show the opposition that you're getting a little bit like worried. And so I do think it's going to be a difficult game, but I think it's there to be won. I think if we get a goal early, we could be in a really good position. But I back our defense to be able to shut their attackers down. I think as good as Tony is, I think physically he's not able to bully Gabriel and Saliba like he does most center back pairings in the league. And I think we'll be in a good position. We also need to be very careful about conceding free kicks in certain areas because Ivan Toney's really good on free kicks and penalties as well. And so stopping him from being able to knock those balls down into the path of Mbomo and players like that is going to be important. You know, we're going to sit at the halfway line, so they're going to be looking to exploit those spaces in behind. And so our players just need to be smart, communicate, and do the right thing when they get in that position. One thing that's worried me a little bit about Ben White in the last couple of games that he didn't have before is his lack of composure when being pressed against Man United and Everton. I found him to be a problem in build-up where he would get the ball and he would panic if the picture wasn't clear and wouldn't make the right decision. And so this is where I think Tomiyasu would be really good because he's kind of like no nonsense. Of course, you're not going to get a lot of overlaps or anything from Tommy, but Tommy is going to shut down that side. He's athletic and fast. So when they pop those balls in behind, he can get to them. And he just tends to make the right decision in possession right now, where Ben White is struggling a little bit with that. And we kind of have to be a little bit no nonsense and make sure that they don't press us into mistakes. And that could be something that could put us off. So that would be something that I would look at. Now, in terms of from an attacking standpoint, I think we just have to play our game and be patient. You know, I feel like against Everton, I just saw us not being patient. And when we got into the final third, we made the wrong decisions. We panicked. And I would also like to just see us take more shots and stop trying to walk the ball into the net. We have been doing so well lately about taking shots early, taking shots from outside the box to bring their players out. We just weren't doing that against Everton. We were very trying to walk the ball into the box. And then if we ever got in and around the box, we just hit it hard over the bar. And it's just like, I haven't seen that from us in a minute. Let's see. Ivy says, would you start White? So that's what I was just talking about. Thank you so much for your super chat. Would you start White? Not liked his last two performances against United and Everton. I'd personally bring in Tommy. Exactly. That's what I would do. I would do that. I would do that. I just like, again, just like I said, Everton pressed Ben White and he just didn't seem like he could make the right decision. And that really hurts Bukayo Saka. When the right back doesn't make the right decisions, it hurts one of our best players the most. And so just keeping it simple in those positions, whether it's kicking it out into the stands, whether it's just a simple pass, into a midfielder, whether it's popping it over the top into the channel to Saka, we just need somebody who's going to be calm in possession. And lately that hasn't been Ben White. So that's what I would do. Ben White's overlaps have also been weird as well. Like he's not timing them correctly. It just seems like he's lost a little bit of confidence, and I'm not really sure why that is. But from our perspective going forward, I just think we need to play our game and be patient. If we don't get the goal early, don't panic. We'll get the chance, but when we get it, we have to bury it. And so this is why I would consider playing Trossard, just because I think Martinelli, out of all of our players, tends to be the most predictable when he's in the final third. When, Jesus is there, he's kind of like somebody you don't really know what he's going to do. Saka, he could be predictable, but you can't stop it. He's too good. With Martinelli, because he's a little bit of a head down, running as fast as he can. When he's not on it, he's really easy to defend, I think. Not really easy is probably doing him a disservice, but he can be shut down. Bringing in somebody like Trossard that you don't really know what he's going to do. He has a little bit more creativity and a little bit more ingenuity, like in tight spaces, probably would be the best option on that day, you know, at like in a position where they don't really know how he's going to play with us. People have sussed Martinelli out. And so I would start Trossard in this game and see if we can get him off the mark, because I also think he needs his first Arsenal goal sooner rather than later. Your attackers, you need to get them off the mark. And so he's going to be so important towards the end of the season. I want him to get his first Arsenal goal like tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And so that also takes away that weird kind of Eddie and Martinelli don't connect. They don't connect. And Kedia passes and connects with some of our midfielders, but mostly like with Saka. And so I think Trossard, because he can kind of do a little bit more, be a little bit more creative, he could drop in a little bit more, kind of do a little bit of the Jesus stuff too. It just gives us a little bit of something different. I would maybe look at putting in Trossard and Tomiyasu. Those are the two changes that I would make. Let's see. Let's see what you guys are saying. Anthony says that Brentford game will be Odegaard's game. I'm sure he's beating himself up after Everton game and will come with something to prove. Yeah, it's not really with Odegaard, it's not really like often that we see him play poorly. You know, it's really not. And so I don't think he was like so bad, but he was kind of like culpable for the goal. Obviously, you don't want Odegaard on Tarkovsky, but still, you'd expect him to do better than that. And so he definitely needs to like run the show on Saturday and be the difference maker. We know when he's on, we're on, and he's had to carry some of the goal scoring because when Jesus is not there, he stepped up so much, and I think against Brentford it's going to be no different. Let's see. Boy says Martinelli was great on the left against United when Zinchenko, Xhaka, and Odegaard were running down the side of the field to create. The thing is, like, Martinelli can't be isolated. Like, he needs to have players interchanging with him and near him. And I just feel like our team is kind of a little bit more on Saka's side, going towards him a little bit more and not really paying that much attention to Martinelli, maybe like they should. But I think that's because Xhaka and him are both kind of like missing Jesus, because Jesus would float out to the left more than the right. So again, I just think the changes should come a little bit too from Arteta's side to make sure that one side isn't being neglected. Let's see. Don One says it's an extra week for Trossard and Jorginho to settle in. Yeah, exactly. It's from my perspective, like I wasn't really looking at Jorginho like he did anything wrong against Everton. I think the whole talk about him was like totally overblown. He just didn't change the game. You know, he just didn't change it. And so, and I don't think he's the kind of player that will change many games, you know, when we need a goal. Like, I think he's more of somebody that's going to keep us steady, if that makes sense. And so, like, he will have bedded himself in a little bit more with the team, but I still feel like he's somebody that I wouldn't want to see from the beginning. But Trossard is somebody I want to see from the beginning. Joseph says Xhaka needs to shoot more off him. Yeah. He's just lost a little bit of his final thirdness, you know. And I do think it's a lot to do with Jesus, but I also just think it's not Xhaka's natural inclination. Like, and I just feel like he's a little bit lost. I'm trying to figure out what is he doing in midfield, because you need all three of your midfielders doing something. Odegaard carries a lot of the creativity, you know, a lot of leading us from that midfield position, a lot of the pressing, a lot of that. Thomas, we know what he does. He does all the sweeping and covering fullbacks and dropping into the back line and doing all that kind of stuff. But Xhaka needs to be the box-to-box shuttler. He needs to get into the final third. He needs to be able to connect those dots on the left-hand side. And I just have found him to be a little bit quiet, which isn't a bad thing. But when you're struggling and Thomas Partey is kind of being man-marked and Odegaard's being kicked, the third midfielder becomes so important. And I've just kind of felt a little bit like almost like I wish somebody else was there that had a little bit more about them, especially in terms of progressing the ball. I wanted to show you guys something that because we're kind of talking about midfield a little bit here. And this is where I still feel like, even when we speak about, like, my feelings on Granit have changed in terms of, do I want him out of the club immediately or anything like that? No, like, I feel like he's done really well to reinvigorate himself and do what Arteta has asked him to do. He's a lot less hot-headed, like he's a leader and all that kind of stuff, and I would love to see him stay, but there's still a level to upgrade in terms of that position. And because that player needs to be able to add goals. You know, that player ideally should be creating goals and shooting, and should be a high GA player, I feel like. And we haven't gotten that in the second half of the season. This is something that I saw that popped up, and I was going to show you guys too. Let's see. And I get he's kind of like unsung hero type, but still, that player, there's a level to go up. There's a reason why we're looking at left-sided eights, or, you know, players for that position. It's not because we need somebody to be Granit's best friend, or we just need another player. It's because there is a level to go up in that position, you know. So it's you know, I think that's pretty clear. So this is an interesting little like chart thingy that says goals scored, XG registered, data from FBref. This is from this season, minimum 540 minutes. And so the key to this, like, players that score a lot from a low XG. So like these types of players, I'm not big on players that score a lot from low XG, because sometimes I feel like they're overperforming their XG and they're not really as good. They're like a purple patch, like a Willock, you know, like when he went to Newcastle originally, I thought he was, you know, he's scoring a lot of goals from a low XG, which means that at some point it will even itself out. And the players that are kind of close to that are like Pascal Gross, like Fred is down here. There's not a lot of players here, but like Madison is kind of closer to this line. You know what I mean? And obviously these goals per 90 minutes, and then this is the XG per 90 minutes. So obviously you want to be like over here somewhere. And then you have like players that don't score a lot but register a high XG. Gundogan is kind of like the closest one to that. And then there's all these players kind of like in here. You have Willock, you have Morgan Gibbs White, you have De Bruyne, which, you know, he's still like whatever. Joe Linton. These players are like good players, but like obviously you want more than this. Tielemans, Jorginho, like all these players are kind of like not really registering that high of XG. They don't really score a lot of goals. These are like more of your DMs, I feel like, or players like metronomes in your team or whatever down here. I feel like the position that Granit Xhaka is playing, that player should be here. They should be more in this area. Look at Odegaard, by the way. Players that score a lot and register high XG. Look at Odegaard. Like, look at how far he is. Like, you have somebody like Bruno Fernandes. Like, he scores a lot of goals, creates a lot of goals, high XG, like all that kind of stuff. McAllister, a player that I would love for us to look at for that left eight. And so I think this is like an area to improve upon. Being like not really in positions to register a decent XG and also not scoring a lot of goals. I feel like that type of player should probably be your DM and not a player that's supposed to be your 8. If that makes sense. I feel like we're not getting as many goal scoring opportunities from that position as we probably should. But it's not to like shoot Granite down or anything like that. Like, it's just maybe an area to improve upon. But I'm looking at McAllister like, you're looking like the perfect person for me, you know? He's the player I would like to come in. Dealing with Brighton, though, we know, but let's see what you guys are saying. Anthony says a cheeky 60 million bid for McAllister been in this been in the summer. I would love it, but you know, it's such a hard it's hard to deal with Brighton if you've killed the relationship. I don't know if we actually have or not, but Ivy says so. A Declan Rice in the left half space next summer, right? I think that's what Rice is being looked at for. I think a lot of people think it's for the DM position. I actually don't. I think Declan Rice is being looked at as the Granit Xhaka's successor. He's could be a sensational number 8 the way that we play. They still have to have defensive. They can't just be like a number 10. I think that's what we've struggled with in our team. And I think if you're going to play the type of DM that's a little bit more like a Xavi Alonso, a little bit more of like Arteta, the way that he played for us, more Jorginho like, which I think is what Arteta really likes in a DM. The the 8, I do think, has to have a little bit of defensive responsibility because you can't just leave that player with 2 number 10s. So you wouldn't want to see a Emile Smith Rowe and Fabio Vieira plus like a Jorginho. You'd want to see like another more robust player on the left to kind of counterbalance that out. And so I think that's why Declan Rice would be like the perfect box to box 8 that can also get in the final third from an Arsenal perspective, because Arteta can coach that. And I think he plays differently with Moyes and with England, but he obviously has all the tools to kind of be like whatever he wants. And I think that's why we're looking at him. But at the same time, like McAllister for me, just he stands out from my perspective. When I watch him, I think that's the perfect player for that position. Because even like for Brighton, obviously he's not like a defensive midfielder, but he still wins the ball back. He's responsible defensively and stuff like that. He's not as like big and strong as Granit, because Granit's like 6'1", but you don't really need all of that. You just need somebody who's not like totally defensively unaware, you know? Don one says, I'd rather Zubamendi over Rice. Rice is overrated for me. Again, I think Rice is more for the 8 position, and Zubamendi would have been the 6, which is who we were trying to replace. We were trying to replace El Neni, and that's why we went after players that I think are more geared towards the 6 role than that, you know. Yo-Yo says, if ESR wasn't always injured, he would have played the 8 again this season. He really added goals to his game last season. Yeah, and like, he just needs to like be able to stay fit, but he would be a good number 8 for Arsenal. What I worry about with Emile is his defensive awareness. And so I think we'd either have to go up a level in terms of our possession and controlling matches. We do a really good job. Like we went from maybe like a B- last season, maybe like C+ B- in controlling matches from minute 1 to minute 90 last season to like a B+ this season. There's still a level to go up if we're controlling more of the matches and our possession is so strangling that the other team barely touches the ball. We can keep the spaces small. Emile would be okay in the 8 role, but I think the way we play now, I'm a little bit afraid to have 2 players that aren't really defensive, like they have no defensive anything, and just leaving the DM by himself. That would worry me just a little bit. Mamang says, Jess, why don't you want Caicedo anymore? Caicedo really wasn't like my number 1 choice. Like he was never the player that when we were going after him, if that's what Arsenal want, if that's what Arteta wants, like I want that. That's fine. He wasn't my number 1 choice. Like now that we didn't get him, I'm not even thinking about him anymore. Like as an upgrade for the number 8 position, a Rice or a McAllister would probably be my ideal options. And then for the number 6 role, like Zubamendi looks like the type of midfielder that Arteta is going to want. And no offense, you guys, but like Arteta is going to go after the Spanish style number 6. And that might sound reductive and stupid, but more of the Busquets, Xavi Alonso, Arteta when he played 6 for us, Rodri type versus the break your leg type. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to get a Brazilian DM. We're going to get a Spanish DM, if that makes sense. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was like, I think that's like the best way of describing it. Brazilian DMs are more really defensive minded, hard tackling, sweeping kind of guys. And then your Spanish DM is a little bit more like cute with it, a good passer of the ball, a good reader of the game, more of like that type. And I think that's why Arteta was like obsessed with Jorginho. And that's why he wanted him before we got Thomas Partey. Don't think Thomas Partey was his number 1 choice. And so as we progress, I would not expect to see a more like Basuma type or like Ndidi type come in. I think we're going to go more in the other route. And so Zubamendi kind of fits that criteria. Not only is he Spanish, he's from San Sebastian, and none of that really matters, really. But what does matter is when I watch him play, I see Xavi Alonso. And I think that's what Arteta really wants, to be honest. Exactly. Not destroyer type, more of like, yeah, a little, you know. I wish you guys could like hang out with me in real life and then we can like just say things the way we want to say it, because obviously like we're on like a stream that's going to go out like on YouTube or whatever, but like it's, yeah, let's just leave it there. Leave it there. If you guys knew me in real life, like we would just like kiki about this. It's funny. Anthony says Mikel Arteta needs the PMP 6 for the Prem, much like Klopp needing a Fabinho type. Mikel Arteta will need a physical dominance in the pivot. Still think we go for Caicedo again. I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. Again, like Arteta could have went for Edson Alvarez. He could have went for Onana. He could have went for a more physical DM. He opted for Jorginho. And I think that's the type of player that he more is going to lean towards. The PNP thing, I think that's something that we feel like we need, but Arteta said it himself. Like there is like a quote from Arteta speaking about Jorginho and Rodri and these guys, and that's what he prefers. Interceptions, reading the game, right place, right time, but ultimately controls the tempo and knows when to make is more tactically astute than just like somebody sweeping up. Yeah. So yeah. I do think like more of like that type of player will come in. So yeah, there's 180 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, the changes that I would make to the team against Brentford would be Trossard for Martinelli and Tommy for Ben White, not because those players are crap. I think those players are fucking great, but they're out of form and we need a win badly. And players need a little bit of like something to like play for. And right now, there's like Premier League games. So switch it up. And I'm sure the next time Martinelli and Ben White play, they will be hungry and ready to go because they'll be one, rested, and two, like, damn, I don't want to lose my spot. So yeah, Bro Pro says, yeah, Arteta is obsessed about control. I can see he likes a possession player. Yeah. From like my personal preference is more of like, I love a Casemiro. I love like Gilberto. Like that is like my like type of DM that like from my like if I had to get one, that's what I would go for. Love Partey. I think he's great as well. I'm not really like, oh, let me go get a controller type of number 6. That's just wouldn't be me. But what do I know? If I want to get the DM that I want, I need to go play Football Manager, So whatever Arteta wants to do his thing is what I want. And when I look at Zubamendi, I see that's the kind that he wants. So yeah. But let's get predictions for the match. Who's going to score? How do we think the game is going to go? All that kind of stuff. Let's get into that. And then I want to do a little bit of just random Q&A for like 10 minutes or something like that. So get your predictions in. You guys, so far so good with the internet. Hello, you can see me. It's so clear. Like I could cry, you guys. Like seriously. That internet was killing me softly. Like it really was. Yes, I have my champagne. Hello. Oh, by the way, while you guys are putting your predictions in, I am going to the game. So hello. I'm going to the game. So I will be there to cheer the boys on. Also, Arsenal women are in the final of the FA Cup. They beat Manchester City last night, so that final will be at Selhurst Park. I will be trying to get tickets to that as well. Our girls need our backing as well. Boy says 3-0 and Nketiah hat trick. The Conti Cup. Yep. Yo-Yo says 2-1 Arsenal. I think Brentford equalized and we leave it late to go 8 points clear. Whew. I don't like your version, Yo-Yo. I like the version where it's more 2-0 and then they score like a late consolation. Mamang says 3-1. We always forget to keep a clean sheet, especially at home. I don't know what it is. The football giant says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Big up to the ladies team. Arsenal fan says 2-0 Arsenal. Gabby Gold says 3-0 bounce back with clean sheet. Anthony says 3-1. Arsenal and Nketiah in the room, hopefully. Lay says 2-1 Arsenal. Caleb 2-1. I think we will be rusty, but grind it out. Amira says 3-1 because we never keep a clean sheet at home. Martinelli, Eddie, and Tommy Rocket, because why not? Okay, so there are 3 players that I need them to score their first Arsenal goal. One of them is Tommy. Obviously, when he had that shot against Manchester City, I thought it was going in. I was like, no, because that would have been the perfect first goal for Tommy. Ben White, he also has not scored yet, and Zinchenko. These players don't score lots of goals. I think Ben White, the entire time he was at Leeds, scored 1 goal, but it was like a rocket. And Zinchenko has never scored in the Premier League before. So I think we'll be waiting a while for those guys to score, but any day now, Ify says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Trossard's first goal. Abraham 2-1 Brentford. Oh, hater. Prem CTD says we need a bounce back, and I think we will get it. Hopefully. Santiago says Brentford 2, Arsenal 2. That would be catastrophic. It wouldn't be catastrophic, but you know what I mean? It wouldn't be ideal. Hopefully we win the game. Lloyd says we need to send a clear message over the weekend to prove we are still on top and not going away that easy. 3-0. Cool, yeah. Amira says I need a Tommy goal for my mental health. I love Tomiyasu so much. Boy says, I'm sorry. Terry has Big Steve on the stream right now. I want to roast his cheater club. Terry is live right now, but you can watch that on playback. You guys can continue watching me, but yeah, if you guys go, it's fine. But let's go ahead and do some questions, some Q&A. I'd really enjoy that if you guys want to. Let's see. Go ahead and pop some questions in there. And we'll do a little bit of Q&A. We haven't done this in a while. Let's see. So Renee, you have taken this the wrong way, which I get, but there's nothing wrong with the Spanish midfielder. What I mean is that Spanish number 6s are good. They're more controllers most of the time, and like Busquets, Xavi Alonso, these guys, they are just different than the typical destroyer midfielders. I personally, from my if I had to pick the perfect DM, it would be Gilberto Silva. That's who it would be for me, and he was more of a destroyer. Do you know what I mean? And so there's nothing wrong with it. If like I said, if that's what Arteta wants, and that's what's going to make Arteta ball better at Arsenal, that's what I want. But again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my preference. Some people do want somebody at the base of midfield that's a little bit more cute and gets the interceptions and reads the game a little bit more and doesn't rely upon the physicality aspect of their game to do it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You can win a game with a Casemiro. You can win a game with a Rodri. You can win a game with a Thomas Partey. You can do all of those things. We have preferences. There's nothing wrong with a Spanish midfielder. But my example was just more like the way Spanish midfielders, I think, are brought up is even the sixes have a little bit more of that controlling nature about the way that they do things. Like with Rodri, you barely see him make a tackle, but he seems to always be at the right place at the right time. You know what I mean? Where Casemiro, he does a little bit of that, but he also uses his physicality really in matches to get over the competition. So that's all I meant. It wasn't meant to be anything like shady or anything like that. Of course not. Let's see. James Peary says, I don't know why I put it in the chat like that. Who cares? Concrete Jungle says, should we sell Balogun? No, I don't think we should sell Balogun. I think he should come back for preseason and then they make a decision then. But ideally, I think going to a different league, maybe even the Premier League to like a lower level side on a loan would be the best way to just kind of like get another year because the thing is like I don't know if maybe we can accommodate 3 center forwards. Especially like I know Balogun can do a little bit of stuff out wide, and so can Nketiah. So it's not like, and even Gabriel Jesus can play out wide, so it's not like the end of the world. But I just feel like for his development, he would be better just out there playing first team football, learning his craft. And League On for me, even though it's considered a top 5 league, I do think that the competition is not great. And so seeing him in a different league, a better league against better defenders would give us a better indication of where he is with the team. But also just coming back for preseason and seeing what he's all about. I mean, we will be trying to fight on more fronts next season. So maybe, cup games and, rotational, as a rotational option would be good. But I think for his development, it'd be best to go out. But I would not sell him. I would not sell him. Caleb says, do you think we should have sold ESR last season? No, I don't. If you mean like this past summer, no. Because if we ever get to the point of selling Emile Smith Rowe, we need to be able to get 50, 60, 70 million for him. The reason why I say that is because, and people will be like, 60, 70 million, are you serious? That is the market. That's not what I think he is worth. I think right now he's worth probably around 30, but players are going for double their true valuation now because of the inflation. He's an English, like he's English, he's an attacking player, so you can always go back to the goals that he scored. He's 6 foot, can play multiple positions, and so if we do want to sell him, we need to sell him to like the type of team that's going to pay 50, 60 million for him. If Anthony Gordon, who is shit, by the way, can go to Newcastle for 45 million, we need to be, if we're going to sell Emile Smith Rowe, we need to feel like we can get, because selling him is going to hurt. And so it needs to make sense financially for us to do it. Now, from my perspective, like that would be if next season he cannot maintain his fitness. So not like this summer coming up. I think they gave him the number 10. He's only 22 years old. Let's not rush to get rid of him just now. Trossard has given him the opportunity to come back into the side a little bit slower and not be like, where is Emile Smith Rowe? Like if we had not gotten Trossard, needing Emile Smith Rowe would be like urgent. So from my perspective, it's not this summer. Let him try to prove that he can stay fit next season. But if he can't, then, maybe look at it the following summer. But I'm nowhere near in a space to think about selling Emile Smith Rowe because when somebody is outside of the team, you start to forget what they can do for you. And it was like a year ago where he was basically carrying the team goal wise. And so I think you owe it to him, to get back up to speed. He has a unique skill set that nobody in our team has. He's again 6 foot, fast, skillful, best ball striker at the club. Like this is somebody that if we want to replace him, it's going to cost him right now cost us the same amount that we would get if we sold him. So it doesn't make any sense to move him on. But Emile Smith Rowe just needs more time. Yo-Yo says, with Mead and Viv out, do you think Arsenal will finish trophyless this season? I mean, potentially. I think it's tough because obviously Arsenal were like desperate to buy a striker in the January transfer window because we lack goals. So and lacking goals is pretty much like, what can we do from here? Slipping away in the league, it's not looking great right now in the league, even though we do have some games in hand. But we dropped points to West Ham pretty poorly last week. So I think we have a chance of winning the Conti Cup. We're in the final. Obviously, we'll probably play Chelsea, so that could present a real issue. But last time we played against them, we drew 1-1. So yeah, I think from my perspective, we could go trophyless, but there's still a lot to play for. And so the team just needs to like get it together. There's more than enough quality in there to win something. Let's see. Um, Dev says, question, what are your thoughts on rivals getting new owners? Will this take Kroenke's spend to keep will this make the Kroenke spend to keep up with the new owners? So this is such a good question. I feel like this almost deserves like in its own show with a couple of different people on the panel, because depending on who you talk to, this could be the beginning of the end or how it's always been. And so I think when money first came into the Premier League via Chelsea from Roman Abramovich, we were in a situation where we had just moved stadiums and it made it more difficult. And because the Kroenkes obviously like they did not start actually spending money until they were in full ownership in like 2018. So now they're starting to show the level of ambition that if they had showed that same level of ambition back then, we probably wouldn't have fallen off the way that we did. But we were trying to, you know, like piecemeal it together. Arsene was doing his best. There wasn't a lot of money around. Like we were trying to pay off the stadium. It was just, and we were in top four so consistently that they didn't really feel like we needed to do anything. Then when we fell out, they started to invest more. And now we're here. But now we're in a position where Newcastle, new money, Manchester United potentially getting Qatar-based ownership, Liverpool potentially, um, you know, uh, that same type of ownership structure as well. And then you have Man City are already there, and then you have Todd Bowley. So will this make the Kroenkes, have to spend more? I think the Kroenke model is never going to be like Bowley, like being owned by a nation state. It's never going to be like that. And so Arsenal have to be smarter and use the other parts of what we're trying, like what we have available to us to, give us a little bit of a leg up to compete with those teams. So that's, investing in good recruitment, making sure that we have a well functioning academy, things like that. But, I do think that as a fan base, we need to remain maybe not skeptical, maybe that's too harsh of the Kroenkes, but I think we have to recognize that if they don't keep up this level of spending, at least of what they have right now, and they don't stay, you know, trying to push us back into the top four, that they need to go. Like as much as I like Josh and I think they're trying to do the right things, I still feel like we deserve to be sitting at the big table. We deserve to be sitting with the big boys. And so all that they're doing right now is great, but once the new money comes in, they still have to be willing to do what they're doing now to keep us competitive. And so, yeah, I don't think they'll start spending more. I think what we've done now is pretty much what we're going to continue to do. I think what they want to do is have a group of young players come up together and have a sustained amount of dominance for like a 5-6 year period while they're all in their prime, and then try again, kind of like what Liverpool did. But you have to be almost perfect to do that. And Liverpool and Man City were only really going up against each other. I don't know what this landscape looks like with a Madman Bowley, a Manchester United with Qatari money. I don't know what that looks like. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit worried just because, I do think that a Manchester United with money is different than Manchester City with money. You know, Newcastle with smart, rich owners, already looking to get into the Champions League now. Bowley is just going to keep spending, spending, spending. Are Arsenal smart enough, like, and cute enough and equipped enough with the best people available to stay competitive? Because again, like, there's going to be 6, 7 good teams and only 5 spots for Champions League. We know that starting next season, you can 1 through 5 is now Champions League, right? But there's still going to be 2 odd men out, and it can't be us and Spurs. Like, you know what I mean? So it's going to be tough, but we have quality players now that are just going to get better. If they can invest, you know, what they've been investing and do have smart recruitment, we could be fine. Because again, like, even though like teams like Chelsea and Man United will always spend 100 million on players, Arsenal get the same level of player for like it from their academy for 20 million, 30 million and stuff like that. So smart recruitment is still the thing. It's just a matter of like, you know, when it comes to the Declan Rices and stuff like that, can we pry them away from the Manchester Uniteds and Chelseas? Because that's important as well. It's going to be hard. That's just the truth. You know, let's see what else you guys are saying. Arsenal fan says, what do you think of Manchester City's situation? I mean, I think obviously there's something that's not right. I don't think that the Premier League is just going to come after you for no reason. And so I think Manchester City fans that are sitting around thinking like, oh, we haven't done anything wrong are really naive. I think that the Premier League is really doing this so that they don't have that independent regulator coming in. So they need to catch somebody. And so Man City is the team to catch right now. And they have a good enough case to make something happen. But again, Manchester City have the money to get away from it, and they have the best lawyers. They'll throw all the money at it. It's going to be a long time before we get any sort of resolution on it. I would say that usually fans start here and they think that the worst case scenario is what's going to happen. I would say go to 25% of that, and then that's probably what the outcome will be. So if the biggest thing that can happen to them is relegation, I would say 25% of that is probably like a fine and a slight point deduction, something like that. I think they're going to get a very minimal punishment. Don't think that, because they're going to throw half of those things out, because some of them were just nitpicking like the height of the grass and stuff like that. So I think, but right now this could work to our advantage. The one thing that I will say about having a team that's under a cloud or a club that's under a cloud, it can either galvanize the group or push the group further into turmoil. And right now Manchester City are not a team that's playing particularly at the top of their game. And so we have to see whether or not this galvanizes the group or it pushes them further into turmoil, especially because they have to win Champions League. They're fighting up against a young, vibrant Arsenal side for the Premier League title. Like, they don't look like they're really up for it. So having the cloud over their head as well may not help them. But I don't think anything is going to happen. Nothing that's going to be like, ooh, that's going to really help us in the long term. So yeah. Yo-Yo says, your thoughts on the relegation battle and your boy Jesse. The relegation battle, let's look at the table now. I know there's like a lot of teams like in the same position. So like Leeds, West Ham, Everton, Bournemouth, and Southampton. There's 5 points separating like Southampton and, well, let's say Southampton and Wolves. Wolves have 20 points and Southampton has 15. So like all of those teams for me are in a really precarious situation. They don't score a lot of goals. They're terrible. But what I would say is that the decisions that some of these clubs have made in terms of like the difference between Everton and Southampton for me, or Everton went for a seasoned manager that knows how to avoid a relegation scrap and stay up, versus Southampton that went for somebody that was a little bit more like green. And now they're already want him sacked. They want Nathan Jones sacked, and they already sacked Hasenhüttl not too long ago. So I think if it comes down to it, like with Leeds, they've just sacked Jesse Marsh. If the manager that they bring in has some experience and can keep them from getting relegated, that would probably be the best scenario for them versus going for somebody that's a little bit more fashionable. I always felt like Sean Dyche was somebody that these relegation threatened teams needed to go after. I don't know why he stayed unemployed for so long, and Everton were smart. So I think Everton will avoid relegation. I think he'll be able to claw them out. And because Everton also have a decent grade of player, Tarkovsky, Cody, Dwight McNeil, the midfield three that they have, Awobi, these are not relegation players, so I think they'll be able to claw their way out. West Ham are another team that have too good of players to really be in this position, but Moyes is tanking them, so I don't know what's going to happen with them. I think they could stay down there for a long time. If I had to say who I think are going to get relegated, I would say probably so hard. Bournemouth and Southampton for sure, but I don't think it'll be Everton. I think West Ham will be able to push themselves up just enough. So maybe Leeds, because I don't think they'll get the right manager. And even though they looked okay against Manchester United, I just thought to myself, you need some structure. You need some, like, you need to stick together and have a plan and all that, because they bottled a 2-point lead or a 2-goal lead, and that was a game that they should have had a little bit of sit up shop, get into a 4-5-1. I think they need somebody with a little bit more know-how. If they don't do that, they'll get relegated. And Wolves are just Wolves. So those are my thoughts on the relegation battle. So yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and go now because, yeah, and I'm so happy that the stream went the way that it did. We're clear. You guys could see me. I'm happy. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Again, I'll be going to the game, so I will match day vlog, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully, we come out with a win. So I'll talk to you guys after the game. Love y'all. Bye.